You still hear me, Tim?
Go ahead, we are live.
Good evening, Year 7 parents. It's great to see you for this live event. It's a real shame that we can't see you in person this evening because traditionally the Settling in Evening is one where we get to say hello and present to you in person, get to know each other a little bit better. But things are as they are, and this is the next best thing. And actually, we've done quite a few of these live events now, and they seem to work pretty well. In terms of housekeeping for the event, if you look at the slide, which is there on the screen in front of you at the moment, that gives you an overview of the things that we are going to talk through with you this evening. What's also important is that you have got an opportunity through the marvels of technology to be able to ask us questions. And what we'll do is we'll either answer those questions privately to you if they are specific to you and your child, or we will publish them if they're of interest to, if we judge them to be of interest to other parents who are on the call. There may be some time at the end, depending on how we're going, for us to actually answer some of those questions. And there's somebody who I'm going to introduce in just a moment who is actually working to gather those key questions together. In terms of people who are with us this evening, well, first up, I've got Lydia Shelley, who is the Raising Standards leader for Year 7, but also been responsible for the transition process, working closely with the primary school. So she is going to be presenting to you in just a few moments. She's joined by Megan Roberts, who's the curriculum lead for the EBAC, Sarah Kerr, curriculum lead for maths, and Hannah Albury, curriculum lead for English. And they're going to say a few words about specifics relating to those subject areas. And then there are two other colleagues involved from my senior team tonight. Tim Harkins is doing the production. So you might hear Tim every now and again just switching things from one place to the other, moving slides and so on and so forth. So Tim's making this work perfectly and seamlessly. No pressure, Tim. And finally, Hayley Hill. Now, Hayley is one of the vice principals here at the school, and she works very closely with our parents, and she is supporting the event by gathering together the questions, and she'll do the Q&A element at the end. In terms of your children, if they're sat with you, that's great. If they're nearby and it's convenient, get them involved, because we talk a little bit, and I may have mentioned this in previous presentations to you, about the three-legged stool. It's the interconnection as your children grow up, as they become young adults. It's so important, we feel. We know that primary schools are sometimes different, but it's so important for children to be involved in the conversation, because we work together, ourselves as a school, yourselves as parents, and obviously the children who are absolutely front and centre of the way in which we're doing things. So if they're around and it's convenient, then get them to join you so that we can be you can be talking through some of the points as we work our way through this evening's Settling in Evening. Before I pass over, what I would say is that we were feeling quite nervous and anxious for our children coming back into school in September. Obviously, a long time out of regular schooling, and in particular for our Year 7s who had not really spent much time with us, we were thinking, how is this going to work out? It's worked out fantastically. They've settled in really well. In fact, the feedback from pastoral teams and teachers is that they've settled in, if anything, better than previous Year 7s. So they're doing fantastically well. It's been great getting to know your children. I spend quite a bit of time on duties with them and at start of day as well. They're doing absolutely fantastically as a year group. They're so resilient. They seem to be very happy with life here at school for the most part, and long may that continue. And they've worked really hard, and I'm sure that they should be looking forward to a really good week off next week. There's one more slide, Tim, before I pass over to Lydia. And I'll just say that it's almost pretty self-explanatory, but in terms of framing much of what we're going to talk about tonight, you will quickly see how that fits within our three shared values. And I have shared these with you previously and in previous communications and presentations, but we do very much focus on these different elements. Hard work is what we are always encouraging our children to do. and ourselves to do as well as colleagues working at the school, because actually greatness is achieved by working hard. We all have different starting points and we want to do really well through hard work. We want to achieve excellence, and then the final one in the centre is about the person that we are and the person that we want to be, doing the right thing for one another. And we've seen huge amounts of that over the course of the last half term, the last few weeks from your children. They've got great integrity. They clearly have been getting some really great education and support from home. And I want to thank you so much for the support that you've provided us with throughout this first half term. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lydia and we're going to move on with the evening. But as I say, if you have any questions, please add them to the box and we will do our best to answer them.
Good evening, Year 7 parents, and it's nice to be welcoming you this evening. We would love to be seeing you in person, but I hope this is a great alternative. And as usual, Mr. Coop's stolen a few words that I would have said, and that is I will just echo them. And that is just to say how well the students have settled in. I see them every day, either first thing at 8 o'clock when they come in and wash their hands and come into the new build, or at break time or at lunchtime. And they have settled very well. You know, they don't know any difference about how our school normally runs. And when I speak to them, I ask them how they're settling in, and they are enjoying the experience and they're often very excitable about it. So this evening really is about making sure you know how to support your children and what they are doing day to day in their school days, and how you can support them after school and in the preparation to assessments, etc. So we start in how we kind of know how they're doing. So Tim, next slide, please. We assess them against key performance indicators, which we call KPIs, and they're a set of knowledge and skills for each topic in each subject that we set. You know, it's largely mapped against the national curriculum, but these are things that we expect that they are able to do by the end of that academic year. So it doesn't matter if they don't know all of them now. You know, they're very early into their Year 7 journey, but we want to be encouraging them with the language that they don't know it yet, but they will get there. You know, with practice and with repetition and with more teaching and with homework, they will get there. So, you know, it's that language that we're using with them where we encourage them to say, I don't understand it yet. And if you do that at home, you know, tell them to be patient with their learning. They're with us for a long time. You know, we hope many of them will be here in 7 years, at the ending Year 13 and going on to university. We've got a long time to work on a lot of the skills, so be patient and keep plugging away. Working hard is what we want. So you will get, you know, every 3 times a year. So Tim, next slide, please. You will get a report. So they will sit assessments. We call it a cycle, which is roughly an old term in length. So they will sit their first significant assessment towards the end of the next term, so in December. You will then get a report that is sent home to you, and as you can see, the report, you'll get a report for each subject. You'll get their attitude to learning, which is a great indicator of how much effort they are putting in, and then you'll get their percentage score for that test. You'll see then there's a school average and a school highest. Now really that is your information. You know, you'll know where your child should be sitting, and then that shows you where they are for that particular assessment. The school average is really useful because different exams have different levels of complexity, and an 80% in one subject doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as an 80% in another subject. You know, and actually by being able to see the average in the year group and the highest, you can judge where your child is sitting for that. The other thing we want you to be doing is looking at their books. Books are a really good way of seeing how your child is doing. You'll see teacher feedback. And actually after this event, what we're encouraging is that students in their maths, English and EBAC subjects bring home their books for over half term. You know, you need to be looking through them. And you can be giving them a bit of a prod if you don't think it looks like the effort is going in that you'd expect, or the effort that you saw over primary school. You know your child best, and you can tell you can tell a lot by their book. You can look at things like their presentation to start with. You can look at spellings. You can look at the layout of the work. They're all things that you can focus on and be talking to them about the work that they are doing, because their books should be their first port of call for their revision in their exams. Next slide, please, Tim. And the exams start, like I said, at the start of December. There'll be a week of exams, and it is likely at the moment that these subject assessments will take place in the classroom. Normally, they would go into the main hall, and that may be something that we're able to do. We've got 2 large spaces that we could do exams, but at the moment it's likely they'll take place in the classroom. They'll be told which lesson of the day they'll be taking each exam, and they do need to spend time preparing for those exams. They'll be taking lots of exams over the next 4 years in preparation for their GCSEs. We need to make sure that students are revisiting things that they haven't yet secured. So those things at the end of year 7, those KPIs that they haven't met yet, it's not the end of the world, but there is a reason that they're on there, and they do need to go back to those and to be looking at committing those to memory or learning, whatever the subject, whatever the discipline is, because that is knowledge that they will need at some point in the future. Next slide, please, Tim. So, we do exams 3 times a year, and the reason that we're doing that is because we're preparing your child for their GCSE exams, and we want to send them wherever their next destination is with the very, very best chance of succeeding and being able to do what they want to do in their future. We are preparing them for a lot of exams. So for the last 2 years, they've been taking a lot of exams, around 22 exams in total over their GCSE period. If we didn't do our formal assessment periods and prepare them for sitting in the hall and revising and being disciplined in that in the exam habits that they need to work on, just going back and making flashcards or however it is that they revise best, we wouldn't be doing our best for them. We do need to prepare them for what is coming in the future. Next slide, please, Tim. We do want students to remember, and we all do forget, don't we? If you just press a few times forward, please, Tim. And actually what you can see is that when we first learn something, we do forget it. And I'm sure if I asked you to go back and sit a GCSE maths paper, you may not get 100%. It's likely that you will have forgotten something, so we have to review it. And so by doing kind of lower stakes, high frequency testing and just going back to revisiting things and interleaving our curriculum, we're aiming that more things get committed to memory and students retain more of the important things that they will need in their future. What I'm going to do now is I'm now going to hand you over to Miss Roberts, who is our curriculum lead for EBAC. So they see your the EBAC team see your children 4 times a week. So that's 4 hours a week they spend with their EBAC teacher. So I will hand you over now.
Thank you. So I'm Miss Roberts, and I can honestly say it's just been brilliant to get to know the Year 7s over the last 7 weeks. They've adapted really well and settled into life at Shoreham Academy. I'll first just explain what EBAC is. I know last year we had a lot of parents sort of say, what exactly does it involve? They hear their children talking about that subject quite a bit. So for their first year at Shoreham Academy, they have the same teacher for a series of lessons, as Mrs. Shelley said, and we teach a variety of topics within those lessons. So we teach history, geography and religion and worldviews. Because they're with that same teacher quite a lot and they stay in the same room, we see this as a great way to help with transition. And it's just been brilliant this term. It really has to see all their enthusiasm and engagement with this topic as well, from students bringing in artifacts. I think one brought a helmet in recently, taking amazing photos. It's just been really, really brilliant. If I could have the next slide. You can see then the team here. In different times we would have been able to come and see you, you'd be able to pop into the classrooms to talk over their work and to speak to the teachers, but instead, as Mrs. Shelley said, they're going to be bringing their books home to you this week. So I've had amazing feedback from each of the teachers though. The books have been brilliant, been neat and tidy, and just wonderful engagement in the lessons as well. We've been really, really impressed with how they've done. If we just go to the next slide then as well, please. So some of the topics we've been covering are Norman conquest, medieval England, rivers, erosion, world maps and Buddhism. So they will be in the cycle test that Mrs. Shelley has pointed out. There'll be those significant assessments along the way, so at Christmas and Easter and at the end of the year. But our team that you just saw previously, they will assist by setting revision tasks on Firefly and helping the lessons as well, leading up to this. The other question I get asked quite a lot of these settling in evenings, what can we do to improve, or how can we challenge and help our children either with the EBAC homeworks or revision and things like that. There are so many incredible resources out there now, things like the horrible histories and horrible geography. I saw one the other day called Earth-Shattering Earthquakes, for example. They just sound really, really brilliant. There's many things on TV as well, the horrible histories again, but also things like the David Attenborough programmes. I had such a brilliant discussion with my form the other day, and it was just, again, amazing to hear that enthusiasm and engagement in the world around us. So that's what we want to be seeing, that kind of engagement in the world around us, and that really big enthusiasm as well. And BBC Bite Size, I know, have a lot on there as well. During lockdown, they put lots of brilliant resources on there. So just to say, yeah, we're an absolutely lovely cohort, and we're really, really lucky to be teaching them this year. So thank you very much. Have a lovely half term.
Thank you very much, Miss Roberts. So if you have any questions specific to EBAC, we will be sharing Miss Roberts' email address if you need it, but please do contact us through reception if there's any specific questions for EBAC teachers, or the same for the maths and the English teams. So I'm going to introduce you in a sec to Mrs. Kerr, who is our Key Stage 3 curriculum lead for maths. Just before I do, I just wanted to, we have had a change of plan for our Year 7 maths setting at the moment. We did, when I spoke to you back in July, we thought we were going to set maths students after their first baseline assessment, so straight after this October half term. You'll know that they have done their baseline assessment, but we have decided that we're not going to use that as a sole basis for setting. You'll be aware, obviously, we don't have the same amount of Key Stage 2 data as we did last year. So we do have the data, but we're going to wait for further data, which we'll get from the end of cycle assessments. So we will use those to set the students in maths to begin after the Christmas break. And with that, I will hand you over to Mrs. Kerr.
Good evening, everybody. So as far as Year 7 maths is concerned, you'll have noticed that your kids are doing Sparks now. It's a trial that we are doing, and it's working really well. Students are very engaged. They're doing really well. We're getting about 100% success, and that's what the students need to be aiming for, 100% correct on their work. Initially, when we started in September, it would go through some basic questions, but after about 4 or 6 weeks, which is around about now, it's going to start diagnostically working with the questions your child can answer. So it'll be based on their ability. They should be completing the compulsory questions, like I said, to 100% correct, but there is also optional and target questions too. And it's very strongly advised that they continue with these, which a lot of students are doing. As it's a trial, we have had some hiccups to start with, but most of that's being ironed out, and you can speak to your teacher if you've got any problems and issues. But on the whole, it's been very successful, and we're hoping to continue that and maybe roll it out for other years as well. You can see on the next slide, please, Tim, that students are encouraged to write a code down for each question they are answering. And if we move to the next one, you'll see a little bit clearly that there is some nice work structured by the students, and it's got the codes for each question written down the side. And that's because periodically the students will get asked to write a code from a previous question. And that's to check that students are writing down the working out in their homework books and that they're getting answers correct or know how to get them correct. So that's a nice example there of some work where a student has done the working out and also written down the code in case one of those codes is asked for as they go along. If we look at the next slide, we'll see also another beautiful book presented well. Work is spaced out. Clearly, we've got the questions and the answers and some highlighted in colour, which is brilliant. And it just shows the child what they're doing clearly. So when they come back to revise for their few assessments that we've spoken about before, they can use this information to help them and look at it again to interleave topics that they may have forgotten, as we know they do. Next slide, please, Tim. So here is a class book. Students are encouraged to have a margin, clearly write the date and the title, space their work out, but also write in black pen, which is a bit different from primary. They're using a lot of pencil in primary. So black pen now, but also if they are drawing diagrams, if they're using a pencil, generally using a ruler. So this shows clearly, nicely drawn work with a ruler. So that's the presentation when the students take their books home this half term that you should be looking for. And here's our topics. So each topic here has a KPI test, as we mentioned before. So we'd work through a topic and do a test. So the students, you can ask them, because the KPI tests are what teachers are mostly marking at the moment as opposed to the books. So they can take those home if you like as well. The topics in the first autumn term there, 1A and 1B, it's mostly number work. Also the start of the spring term, 2A, you'll notice we don't start algebra work until the middle of 2B, so that's after Easter heading towards the half term. And they'll be looking at other shape work as well. So to start with, we will go through topics that they have done in primary school to make sure they are embedded and understood before they can use those concepts on harder, more problem-solving questions. And the summer term there is 3A and 3B. And obviously we have the end of year assessment, cycle 3, along with at the end of autumn, the cycle 1, end of spring, cycle 2, as mentioned before. So that's about it for maths. Just have a look at the books when they come home for presentation. Students would have marked their own books, see if they're on track, ask them about their KPI test. And we're just trying to continue the encouragement that primary school have done with maths and increase and maintain their motivation for our subject.
Thank you, Mrs. Kerr. And just before you sneak off, we've had a couple of questions about the maths baseline assessment that's come in. Did it go home today for students?
So they did it a week or so ago, and they do have it in their folders. They are allowed to take them home, and they also have a coloured sheet that gives them information of what questions they got correct and not, topics that you can look at and extra topics you could revise or have a look at again over half term, the ones that they're not secure in yet. So yes, they have the results, they have the test back, they have a diagnostic element about what they have got successful and not, and they can bring that home this half term.
So it's that coloured sheet that's really important, that will kind of be the key to guiding you where your child needs to do some extra work or the areas that they may need to work on. Thank you.
Yeah,
and the other question that's just come in, which is a more general question, is about those students that are actually self-isolating at the moment and how you can get their books. Don't worry. I mean, if you really do want them over half term, you could email info and we'll try and arrange getting those to you over half term. But if you are happy to wait, they will be allowed to bring those books home with them when they come back into school after half term. So please don't worry, they won't miss that opportunity. Okay, I'm going to now hand you over to Miss Aubrey, who's our Key Stage 3 curriculum lead for English, and she's going to talk you through English in Year 7 and some ways that you can help your children. Thank you, Miss.
Hello, thank you. So I wanted to start off just by echoing a message that Megan said earlier, and that speaking with colleagues who are teaching Year 7 this year in English, we've really noticed this is a fantastic cohort as well. I've had so many fantastic conversations with my Year 7 students about books they've read over the summer, books they are continuing to read, and that's really fantastic for us to hear that. So as you can see on this first slide, this is just a general overview of the scheme of work, the topics that we will be covering this year, and the key skills that we are aiming to develop in Year 7. And there's a little bit more detail on the following slide. So Tim, if you could on to the next slide. So at the moment, hopefully students have been coming home and talking to you about it, but we have since the beginning of September been reading A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and we will be continuing to read this up until Christmas. Which allows us a lot of time to really go into a lot of depth. Some of the language can be quite tricky and can be challenging, but luckily we've noticed that the students are aware of the story and they seem to be really enjoying it. The benefit of studying this for a whole term is also that we can embed other skills as well, such as creative writing. We'll be looking at some Victorian poetry as well, and we started off the term with a contextual study of Victorian England as well, and the cycle test, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, will be based on our study of A Christmas Carol. So I won't talk too much about this. I think I put a little bit too much detail on this slide, so that might be a bit overwhelming. But for Spring 1 and Spring 2, we're going to be doing a war and conflict scheme. We really think it's important to expose the students to a wide variety of different texts. So we want to ensure, as well as fiction, we're looking at non-fiction, and poetry as well. So that's what we'll be doing for Spring Term 1 and Spring Term 2. There are just some extracts that we'll be looking at, and these are some conflict and war poems we'll be studying in Spring 2 as well. Thank you. Next slide. And then in the summer term as well, an introduction to Shakespeare's world, language, and we won't be doing an in-depth study of Romeo and Juliet, but we will be looking at some key extracts, getting them kind of used to the language before they are exposed to it later on in Key Stage 4. Thank you. Next slide. So one thing we are doing differently this year is each student in Year 7, 8 and 9 for English will have 2 separate exercise books. So one of their exercise books is for all their classwork. We really want to encourage students to take accountability for note taking and for their learning. But every piece of work that we mark, whether it's an assessment or just a paragraph they might have written or a story, will be done in a separate exercise book, which is a yellow book. And on the slide, you can see an example of what this looks like in practice. So we use whole class feedback when we mark the books, which means instead of writing out the same comment 30 times, which can be really laborious, but also not actually that useful for the children, we will have a learning target for each student as well as something that they've done well. And it allows us to spot patterns and misconceptions really easily so we can reteach, which we found is incredibly beneficial for developing the students' writing. And then they will develop their writing in red pen, which you can see on the right, which we found is working really well. And the students really like the opportunity to develop their stories and develop their writing. OK, next slide. Something that we're really focusing on in English as well is explicitly teaching higher level vocabulary. So we've embedded throughout the schemes of work for this year some really high level words, which we are then encouraging students to use both verbally in their responses to questions and also in their writing as well. Yes, thank you. Next slide. And one final thing, it's a lot of information, is homework. Again, hopefully students have been talking to you about their English homework. We're using a fantastic resource, which is brand new this year, and it's free, called Common Lit. And there are all sorts of different texts on Common Lit. So each week, the students are set a different reading task. They might be set a short story, it might be an extract, it could be a piece of non-fiction, it might be a poem. And there are some really fantastic features on Common Lit. If you click the next, it should hopefully circle some of them. So at the top, if students are ever struggling with their homework, at the top there's a really fantastic paragraph which will just give them a little bit of information to hopefully make the text a little bit more accessible. And then if you click one more time. Also, there is a glossary. So as students are reading, they might come across a number. If they click on that number, it will pop up with a definition for the higher level words. They are also being asked to do some multiple choice questions so that we can check their understanding of what they've read. And also, and it can be read aloud. Sorry, I forgot that feature. If students are struggling to read it themselves, they can increase the font size. They can have the text read aloud to them, which is really fantastic. So I hope your children are settling in okay with the homework. We've had really great feedback so far and everyone seems to be on board. If you do want to support your children with Common Lit, if you just Google Common Lit, there is a free parent and guardian guide on their website and a short video as well, which you can watch. Okay, thank you. So I won't talk too much about this, but as Lydia said, the assessment week will be between the 7th and 11th of December, and the English exam will be based on A Christmas Carol. So all in terms of helping your child at the moment, all we need to be worrying about is have they understood the story? They'll be given an extract from the novella and they'll be asked a question, for example, how is Scrooge presented in this extract? And it will be just testing their comprehension skills and also how well they've been able to analyse the language used by the writer as well. But we will be providing revision resources on Firefly and in lessons as well. Thank you. And finally, I have had a few emails from parents asking how they can support their children with English. Really, it just comes down to reading. If it's all possible, reading to your child, getting them to read to you, getting them to talk to you about what they're reading in class or at home, ensuring they're reading age-appropriate and challenging books, and helping with their Common Lit homework if possible, and encouraging them to write, even if it's something as simple as a shopping list. All of those things would be incredibly helpful. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lots of really useful information. Again, I'm really aware that you've had lots of information given to you. There will be a recording of this event and the original PowerPoint put on the website for you after the event and definitely by tomorrow morning. So you can go back to it, look at the information and also listen again. But thank you very much to the curriculum leaders who have been in to talk to you this evening. So now I just want to talk a little bit about revision, preparing for those end of cycle assessments and also homework. So you should have noticed your child doing homework over the last 6 weeks. We want them to develop regular homework habits. We want it to become natural, not a chore. Although I'm not sure anybody ever likes doing homework, but we do want them to get into good habits. As parents, you can see the homework that is being set on Firefly. So if you log in, you can see what tasks have been set and when it is due. We do stop setting homework about 4 weeks prior to the assessment. So about two weeks after half term, you should see that it's either revision homework that is set, or they will be giving people time to be doing their own work. Up until that point, they should be spending, these are approximate times. They should be spending around an hour doing English homework every week, maths around an hour, science, which is starting after half term, that will be around 45 minutes, languages 30 and EBAC 45. These times, these are really rough timings. See how your child is getting on, look at what they're doing. If they're having to spend a lot more time than that doing the homework, please do contact us and your pastoral teams. They might need some support. There are some breakfast clubs where they can do some homeworks that are running, and we hope to be starting the homework clubs as soon as we can. But do just monitor the homework that they're doing. We don't want them doing too much. They need to strike that balance now. Also, they should be doing reading. Reading's really important. Miss Aubrey has just been talking about the reading homework. They should, in addition to their work, be doing about an hour and a half, so 30 minutes, 3 times a week. It doesn't matter how they break it up, but regularly, it's kind of small and often is normally better. There is a reason that we focus so much on reading, and that's because it's got a huge impact on absolutely everything that they do. It allows them to access the curriculum, access the test materials. So please do, one thing is go on about their reading. It's really important. Try and enjoy reading as a family together. So revision, maybe this isn't something that your children have done very much of on their own. We will support them, and we know it's a skill that they need to learn. But you can help with this at home as well, just by showing an interest in what they're doing and asking them how they're preparing. We will provide them with material, and we scaffold during year 7, and gradually over the years we ask for more and more independent revision to be done. There is a lot of information on Firefly, so if you just go onto Firefly, in that subject you will see revision material with knowledge organisers and ideas for revision. It may be the first time that they're doing more formal assessments, so please ask if you need any help. We're not doing the assessments to cause any extra stress for students, but it is important that we prepare them for the formal exams that they will be doing. We can't hide from that fact. Thank you, Tim. So alongside that really comes the pastoral support that we offer, and I hope you've been finding that if you've needed the pastoral support over the 6 weeks that we are there to support you, you'll know which school your child is in now, but just in case, some reminders of the key people. Thank you, Tim. So in the Doyle team, you have Dr. Merchant and the pastoral managers, and Kipling, you've got Miss Eaton and the pastoral managers, and in the Wells team, you've got Miss Ballinger and the pastoral managers. They are there if you need help or you have any questions. And we don't forget the mentors either. So we're really pleased that despite a number of changes that we had to make, your children are in the mentor groups and the EBAC groups that we set out in June and July. So they have stayed consistent, and their mentors really are, the person that they see every day, and should be kind of your child's first port of call. They can always pass things on to pastoral managers if they need to. It is still important that we focus on attendance. We know there may be a reason that your child is off school. You may have been asked to self-isolate. We may have asked you to self-isolate. But other than that, we do expect your child to be in school. If you're unsure about anything, you can ask us if you want advice. I know we've sent out a lot of communication in the weekly emails that Mr. Coop spends a long time writing throughout the week. So we're really trying to get you lots of information, but ask us if you're unsure. But if your child's not in school, they're not learning as well as they could be. So, unless they really, really need to, please make sure that they are in school. And I just wanted to make you aware of a change to the mentor programme for after half term. We are reintroducing our reading sessions in mentor time. We had stopped doing them during this time because we wanted to focus more on back to school discussions and allowing time for student discussion, which we didn't always have lots of time previously pre the summer. So now the mentor programme will look like they'll have a careers or PSHE session. Now PSHE is next term, so there won't be another careers session after, it was today actually was their last careers session until after Christmas. They will be set a Firefly task in regards to careers over half term, which is to complete an aspirations survey. We're just keen to see what their thoughts are, where they might need support, so we can tailor that programme after Christmas around them. They then on Fridays will be doing their reading sessions, and there's just a selection of books that they may be reading with their mentor. Then they will still do their debate, they'll still have an assembly, and then they'll still on a Monday have those really important messages that we need to get out to them. So that's kind of what their weekly mentor time will look like. I'll now pass you back to Mr. Coop for the final slides, and then we will have time to answer some of your questions before we leave you to enjoy your dinner and the rest of your evening. Thank you, Mr. Coop.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Lydia. There's been lots of information and we've been responding to some of the questions in the boxes to the side, some privately and some published for sharing. And actually, one of the questions that was covered is explained in this slide here. In terms of, I mean, firstly, the Cycle 1 exams are running in December, so that's a date to be aware of, and that links into something that Lydia was talking about previously in terms of the preparations for that. I think it's important for parents to be aware that, you know, that when we talk about these exams, these are low stakes exams. You know, these are not, and we do not want our children to feel pressure which sits around them. We don't go on and on about setting arrangements. The only subject that we look to set in year 7 is maths in any case. But also setting decisions aren't based solely upon one particular event on one day, because that's just not fair. We want to be using those exams to identify what children know and what they don't yet know and understand yet, so that we can ensure that they're working on the right things. In terms of the parents' evening, there have been some good questions in the boxes around this. Will there be a parents' evening? Yes, there certainly will be a parents' evening. How will that parents' evening happen? Well, we don't know yet. It's scheduled in April, although the exact date is going to be confirmed. We would love it to be in person, because I think that just getting to know people face to face, I mean, this is good. It's as good as it gets, but it's not the real deal. It's not perfect. So if we need to use a virtual process, and we're actually trialing this with a sixth form parents' evening after half term. But if it has to be virtual, then we'll do that, and it will involve you being able to make individual appointments, you know, even virtually with specific teachers. Then so be it. But it would be even better if, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything crossed, by April we're in a position to be able to invite you as parents in with your children to do that. I wanted to make a shout and a play for Friends of Shoreham Academy. This is our PTA group. It's set up by parents, run by parents, working closely with ourselves on staff as well. And it's also supported by students. And this really is something which has grown over the last few years. In fact, you may well have been along to events such as, for example, around about this time last year, we had our Christmas fair, which attracted hundreds of people from the community. Now, we can't do that this year. We're thinking of other things that we can be doing more remotely whilst we are where we are. But I just think it's important, as a parent myself who's gone through the primary school experience, where you feel very involved and very in touch with your children's school. We're really keen for that to continue, because school is a community. It's part of our wider community within Southwick and Shoreham, and that's why we do these events. It might actually raise a little bit of money which can go towards things associated with the school to improve what children are doing. But I would say equally, if not more importantly than that, it's an opportunity to be together as community. We really need that. We really miss it right now, don't we? And I think that, you know, for you to be involved in that, for you to be engaging with those events is important. I think the next slide, Tim, actually provides you with an email address. So what I'd love you to be doing right now, you're thinking, okay, well, it would be great to be involved. I'd like to just mention myself. And this is not just about doing stuff. It's not about being on the committee, which can be a terrible bore. It's about just, you know, kind of being in the loop and being involved in the feedback that you can offer as parents to the stuff that we're doing as well in school. Just grab your phone whilst you're looking at this and plug that email address in and just mention yourself to FOSSA, so that they can get in touch with you and keep you in that loop, because that way you feel more involved and get more out of your time, your children, whilst your child's at the school on their 7-year journey with us. We got one more slide. Is that it? That is it. We are done. We've done our inputs. And if you haven't yet raised a question, feel free to do so within the box. We're going to spend, I don't know, Lydia, we tried to make these events maybe an hour long, so we'll spend 15 minutes answering some of those questions. Now, what's been happening in the background, and you're going to hear from her in just a minute, is that Hayley Hill has been gathering together some questions as we go, and you might hear Hayley in just a moment because she'll be marshalling us. She'll be directing questions towards myself or Lydia, possibly Tim or other people, in order to try and answer your questions, and we will do our best to do that. So over to you, Hayley.
Hi there, and I do have quite a few questions. I have answered some and published quite a lot, so hopefully many of those questions will be seen. I'm going to go straight for you, Mr. Harkins, there with your headphones on, and fire a couple of questions to you, which are about Firefly. Why can't I see the homework set on Firefly, as one comment made? What do they need to do?
You should be able to see the homeworks that are set on Firefly as a parent or as a student. It should come up in your tasks, and you can filter those in various ways. So usually the best way is to have them filtered for ones that haven't been done, and then as your child marks them as done, then they kind of fall off that list. But your parental login should allow you to see everything. It's under tasks rather than homework. There's also an app that if you look on the Firefly page, on the link on the parents section, you can download an app. There's a parental app. There's also a student app, which a lot of the students use because it pops up a reminder for them about a task being set. If it's not showing for you, then there's something wrong, and I'm sure it's something we can sort quite quickly. So again, on the website, you'll find the email address for our IT help desk. And if you email them, or you can email the main info line and they'll pass it on, we can sort those things out for you. Hayley, can't hear you, Mike's nice.
Oh, okay, second question. When my child submits homework, the next day it still says it needs to be done. Why is this? Okay, so there's a little button that's there that they can click, which just says marked as done. That's all they've got to do. If they go back and click those, it will, as I said, if you're filtering it right, it'll drop off the list, and it won't be showing up on the app and on the parental one as well. Thank you, Tim. Just a couple for yourself, Lydia. I just wondered if you could just explain the achievement point systems and how they're issued and why.
Yes, so achievement points can be awarded for lots of things. There's achievement points that are allocated in class for outstanding work, outstanding homework, showing exemplary integrity and character as they're walking around the school. So what you'll notice, you get notifications of achievement points that have been awarded. They then collect those. You might get them also for attendance at the end of each term, and they then go towards a yearly total and for the Kingston Cup for their school. We also send out certificates when they get to certain points levels.
Thank you. And I know you've had a slide on this, but I just wondered if you could remind our parents and carers about EBAC homework and science homework. How much should they expect, and even Common Lit as well? Yes,
so Common Lit falls within the English homework. So we're only giving rough times for those, and so science, we said it's around 45 minutes, but they haven't had, that's a new homework that's added after half term. We ease them in gently, so their science, they were weekly totals that I gave earlier, so science is around 45 minutes. EBAC is around 60 minutes, and sorry, I can't think of the other one that you asked me.
Common Lit.
That comes as part of the English homework, which is about 60 minutes. The only thing I'd say with, I can see a lot of these questions coming in. Please don't feel like you have to wait for these events or parents' evening to contact us. You can contact us at any time. I mean, if you put that in through the info, or if you ask your child for the name of their teacher and you email them. If you don't get a response, we hope you would get a response within 24, 48 hours, depending on the inquiry, then please do put it through info, and that will come to one of the senior leadership team, and we can follow that up for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Again, Jim, I just want to throw, there was a question there. Why are there no female authors in relation to the schools?
Sorry, I muted myself there. That's a really good question, and one that you won't be the first person to have asked. So you know that sort of adage that you sort of blame the predecessor. Well, I blame the predecessor. I wasn't head teacher at the point at which the school names were formed. Why Wells, Kipling, and Doyle? 3 authors with local connections. If we had our time over again, do we wish that we had thought differently? We could have had a Woolf. We could have had, a different range of authors. We could have approached it differently. We probably would have done. We're now in a situation where those are our established names. And so it becomes a bit of a tradition. So if I was to say to Wells students, I'm changing your name to whatever, they might take exception to that because obviously they've got a sort of a sense of belonging to a particular name. What we have considered is whether or not to have a sort of secondary figure linked into each of our 3 schools, which could be perhaps a little bit less Victorian, a little bit more up to date, and perhaps a little bit more representative of a sort of the diverse range of, colours, faiths, genders, etc., etc. So we're certainly open to that, and it's something which is in our minds.
Also, just a few questions that link with seating plans, and some of the questions have been, will they stay in those seating plans all year? Is there likely to be a change? And if, for example, it's driven by maths, if they were to do really, really well in maths, will there be an opportunity for their child to change maths set?
Yeah, so this is something that we've been discussing because what we do feel is that there will be a point, and Lydia, feel free to chip in. I think we're planning to be, and I think didn't you mention it earlier? Did you mention maths setting earlier?
Yes, right at the start. We on reflection, we thought we don't have quite enough data to set based on the one baseline assessment that they've just completed in maths. So we're going to wait until January when they've completed more assessments.
No, what this does is, so why do we set? We're not a school which is like super into setting, genuinely. But with maths, there are very specific reasons that sit around why maths, conceptually, students learn at very different stages and paces around maths. So therefore, there is a very clear logic around students working at the level that they can engage with. And so therefore, that is the reason why we set. We've delayed it to gather that information, and I think a parent raised that actually the year 6 information isn't necessarily as strong and robust as it would have been in previous years, and I think that's a fair comment. So that's why we've given ourselves a bit longer. The knock-on effect is, well, what does this mean to my child's mental group? Will everything be set by maths? And we were only discussing this actually as a senior team on Monday. I don't want that to happen. I would like there to be, there will be minimal movements within their specific areas, because every year group bubbles actually in, so year 7s are actually in 3 little mini bubbles, which you may well have worked out. It's linked into their languages as well. So they will move for their maths groups, but I'm very keen for there to be continuity in their English, science, EBAC and mentor, because I think that really aids their transition. We want there to be that that consistency for those aspects of what they're doing. And I think that we've always got to try and get the balance right between the risk assessment needs around COVID of movement versus the value and benefits of that consistency of their group. So that's what the plan is at this stage, with a shift to those maths groups in January.
Thank you very much. And just before I sort of pose another maths question, which I do know the answer to myself, there was a lovely message here from Sister, the Kipling Pastoral Team have been fantastic, Mrs. Simons in particular. She has helped my son loads. Thank you to them. And I'm just about to press send to let you know that I will pass that message on, and I will also speak to them directly tomorrow. So thank you very much for those kind words. Those pastoral teams are a huge asset to all of the students' induction. There was a question here about why some maths homework is optional It does say it causes friction when we ask our children to do the optional work. Well, I can imagine that might be the case, but
Wow.
Mrs. Kerr, who was on earlier, has just said to me the reason for doing that is obviously not to cause aggravation in families at all, but it's to allow for that deeper understanding and really giving you the chance to develop some of those skills and embed some of those mathematical skills. That's why it is there. Yeah,
I think that, you know, I guess my message is, since we're making it optional, as parents, encourage, but don't, what's the best way of putting it? Don't enforce it, because it's genuinely and sincerely optional. My experience as a parent, and imperfect experience as a parent, would tell me that actually the more that I force things upon my children, the more they've tended to resist it. So what we want to do is to encourage that love of it and that choice associated with it. So they must do the certain elements, and if you feel that they could be encouraged to push themselves that little bit further, because they're certainly very capable and able to do that in the time, you could perhaps link it into the time and say, look, you can do more in the amount of time which we've indicated as being available.
Jim, just while you're there, and it also could be for Lydia as well, my child has emailed a few teachers on different occasions with queries regarding homework, but they don't often get a response. Is there another email we can use to contact with general homework questions?
Yeah. So you can always put a message through to info, in addition to the specific email of the teacher. Our teachers, as you know, I mean, we don't make a big play of it, but obviously they're under quite a lot of additional challenge at the moment. They're doing all the movement, and that is complicated for them. There's a lot of cleaning elements and so on and so forth to ensure that things are safe for them and for the children. But that doesn't actually excuse them not responding to you. We do expect colleagues to reply to emails within 48 hours or 2 working days. And if you're not getting that from someone, we would certainly want to know about it so that we can kind of get that wheel oiled, as it were. So if you send it through to info and just kind of raise it so that we can forward it on. If it's a math teacher, information for the head of maths, and in the nicest possible way, we will jog the memory of that person who hasn't managed to get back to you.
I think just to clarify as well, when we're talking about info, sorry, we just think you know what we're talking about, but that is an email address, info@shoreham-academy.org. So if you write into info on that email address and put in the subject what the query is relating, we like Jim says, we can jog people's memory, or we can find out the answers to those queries for you. Mrs. Hill, how are we doing for questions?
Well, I think that is virtually it. There's one last one that again, it says in PE, can girls do the sports set for boys if they prefer what they are doing?
I think the PE groups are set, and not set in terms of they're set with their teacher, and that is based on gender. It's something that we can talk to the PE department about, the choice that they're offering those different groups. I believe that they're on a rotation, so they will do other sports as on those rotations. Yeah,
and I can add to that as well, is that they have a strong student voice, the PE department, and they go out each year and ask the students about what sports they would be interested in, and they're a really responsive team, and they do try and rotate the activities to suit the demand that's placed on them. At the moment, we're a little bit limited on some of the options that we can do based on the sort of COVID scenario. But again, what I do see on regular mornings is Year 7s playing badminton. I've seen so far, looking extremely happy and participating, but they are very responsive to student feedback.
Yeah, they have something, the PE department allowed a voice from the groups that they're teaching in the latter stages of the year, in which they say to the students, what would be your dream choice? So they have dream options, and so therefore actually specifically to the group, they then are able to respond to that. The students won't have experienced that yet because obviously they're new to the school, but that does happen.
And there's another lovely email popped in. Just wanted to say a huge thank you. My child has settled into life at Shoreham Academy and I feel he goes off to school every day happy and content. Thank you. What a lovely message.
Thank you very much.
That's the last one.
Yeah, I think also I've been keeping an eye on the questions. I just want to say thank you for the feedback on Sparks. We're taking on board those comments, and I know there seems to be a couple of frustrations regarding kind of the logging on and the codes, etc. So we will look into those for you if we haven't responded directly to your query, but thank you for the feedback.
Yes, I think I did reply actually to one of them and asked the maths teacher why do they have to write the codes, and it's a way of them tracking what work they've actually done. So it's quite a sort of routine approach to it, but it is required. And I did have another thank you message, but it's disappeared. There was another lovely thank you message that I wanted to finish on. It sort of suddenly disappeared. So thank you very much for all of those questions and for those positive feedback as well. I think that's it from me, Lydia.
Would you like to round up, Mr. Coop?
I'd love to. So just wait. Yeah, okay, so that's us done. We're right on the minute, goodness me. That's been, I would imagine, quite a packed 60 minutes for you all. Hopefully that information has been helpful to you. I hope that you have an excellent half term, that you're able to enjoy a little bit of rest, and your children are able to enjoy some well-earned rest on the back of the hard work that they've really thrown themselves into over the course of the last few weeks. We look forward to seeing them back on the Monday. What is it, a week Monday? Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, refreshed and ready to learn some more. Remember, if you do have any questions, as Lydia said, don't hesitate in contacting us because we're only too happy to help. There is literally no question which shouldn't be asked. And even if you feel that you should have heard the answer already, if you're still not sure, just remember to ask. Have a great half term and we'll see you soon.